Microphones, microphones, microphones. Which microphone should you be using for your YouTube channel, and why are all of these ones on fire? Woo. These questions and more answered today. It was a little overwhelming. Your choices for YouTube and microphones are wide and confusing. To make it worse, most people you see on here talking about microphones seem to be trying to get you to buy a certain one. I'm gonna go over pretty much the only 4 types of microphones you need to be looking at, and then each type has a whole range of how much money you can spend on it. But knowing which mic to use for which occasion and how to use each mic is much more important than how much money you spend on it, for YouTube at least. For instance, what you're hearing now is actually a fairly expensive microphone just used improperly. And this is my very cheapest microphone, but used as intended. This is the Neewer CM14, but actually it sounds really good. This big puffball is on here because it's really sensitive to popping sounds, plosives. Fight against that with one of these wind blocker things and bada bing, bada boom. For starters, though, any microphone at all is going to be better than the one that's built into your camera, in all likelihood. Actually, unless you use a modern, here, I'm going to push this away. Unless you use a modern phone and it's pretty close to your mouth, like if you're, I guess, vlogging and your phone is this close to your face, these things are a pretty solid source for audio, actually, surprisingly, for how tiny the microphone is in there. But my camera, I'm gonna switch to the mic that's just on my camera. So my $3,000 whatever Sony a7S III sounds like utter dog shit if I record straight through the camera. This is the sound coming through the camera. This audio is really only useful as a means for syncing 2 camera angles together. Anyway, here we go. These are the types of microphones you should consider depending on what you do on your channel and why. Starting with a very common way to get very good audio is a big old dynamic mic parked right in front of your mouth. This is a Rode pod mic, and these types of microphones work best when they're like 1 to 4 inches away from your mouth, like literally just right there, which puts it firmly in the way if you're planning on doing much of anything other than just talking. So this is how you'll typically see podcasters set up, since audio and conversation is their main focus and not like, I don't know, cooking at the same time or taking apart a computer, which is something I do on my other channel. You'll notice on something like a show like Hot Ones, where they are doing other stuff with their hands other than having a conversation, there's no mics to be seen at all, which means they're actually using boom mics, which I'm gonna get to later. But this kind of setup, a dynamic mic right in front of your mouth, will provide pretty much the best possible sounding audio, even if you're recording in a room that's generally bad for audio. Lots of hard surfaces, whatever background noises like an air conditioner or computers running behind you. And that's because you turn the gain way down on these in order for the mic to be positioned so close to your mouth that it can really only pick up your voice. In layman's terms, this microphone's volume is just too low to pick up all the sounds in the room. Hence, it's right next to my face, so it really only hears me. Plus, the pod mic in particular is designed to only be picking up the sound that's directly in front of it. It still picks up sounds around and behind it, but those sounds will be a whole lot quieter, so the room noise will be less noticeable. So I use Rode pod mics in this way. I got a bunch of them in case I ever interview somebody. Other popular versions of this are the Shure SM7B, which is quite expensive. Colin and Samir use those, all the way down to the very cheap Amazon brands. This is a Behringer XM1800S, where a 3-pack of these bad boys will cost you $35. Actually, here, I'll use that. But there's a lot of handling noise. If whoever's talking handles the thing a lot, it makes a lot of crunchy little noise. But if you set it up on a stand and you're just talking straight into it, this will even sound pretty good, pretty fine for the price. So these things are like $35. These things are like 3 for $35. So this is like $11 and change. And that's compared to the pod mic for about $100 and the Shure SM7B, which is like $400. These types of microphones do make the best audio, but another downside is that it has to be run through some sort of XLR interface. They have to plug into the back of one of these mixers. Whoa. XLR is just the name of the plug on the back of this microphone. The interface could be just a little Zoom pocket recorder, or it could be a full-featured Rodecaster Pro 2. This thing has a sound machine. Kind of ridiculous. It's got onboard post-processing for your voice, and it can accept all kinds of inputs from a couple of different computers, from your phone, from every kind of microphone, XLR or 1/4 inch, and even like the little Rode wireless mics, like these little guys can connect straight to the Rodecaster, but it's kind of expensive. And then when you're recording your audio separately, now you've got this extra step of combining the audio with your video when you're done and you want to start editing. But the upside of an XLR interface is that if you're recording and there's more than one person, each mic will have its own gain. Each mic has its own volume knob, and you can change the volume even after the recording is done. It records every actually track separately. So if you've got a very loud talker mixed with a very quiet talker, you'll be able to get back in there during the edit and crank somebody up and crank somebody else down individually. Something you can't easily do in camera if everything's just recording straight into the camera. On these kind of microphones, if you have two of these, you can set it up so that one is in each channel, left and right, and then you can sort of use the left and right as volume and make them both mono. Next up, and similar to a dynamic mic on a stick, in that they're still gonna be a part of your shot, are the USB mics on a stand on your desk. These are typically condenser mics as opposed to these being dynamic mics. That's just about how they capture audio, but condenser mics will be, in general, more sensitive. So more sensitive to background noises, but also you'll have more, I don't know, texture to your voice. These are meant to be a little further from your face, but it's clearly still gonna be a part of your shot. You could probably have it off to the side and still get the same quality of audio, but you wouldn't get good sound with this like feet away from your mouth. It's gonna be part of the shot. And as with all mics, the further they are away from your mouth, the more you're gonna pick up more of the room. So the more AC sounds, the more fan noise, the more computer stuff. If stuff's happening outside, a mic like this might pick that up, where one of these fellers right next to my mouth is not going to. This one is actually the Amazon Basics USB condenser microphone. Looks like they don't even make it anymore, but it's basically a copy of the very popular Blue Yeti mic, which Amazon confirms that I have bought before, but I have no earthly idea where that thing went. I am very disorganized. But this microphone sounds almost identical to the Blue Yeti. These are great. These are fine. They sound fine. This sounds fine. I find they get in the way even more than the pod mic, because at least with the pod mic, it's like sneaking in from the side so my hands can still be free underneath it. But this microphone is like consuming a spot on my desk. It's straight up in the path of my always flailing arms. Another potential downfall is that it is sitting directly on your desk. And so if you plop your hands down on your desk at any point, or if you're like, I don't know, thudding things down next to you while you're talking, and if the object has any sort of weight, it's going to pick up that sound and reverberate back into the microphone. Next up, the boom mic, the shotgun mic. And this is the mic I've been using now for a lot of what I do, even though admittedly my studio is not properly sound treated for it. And if you have headphones on right now and you listen really carefully, you'll hear the difference. I'm using a Rode VideoMic NTG. It's actually this right up here. I have my second camera angle further back just so I could show basically this microphone. There are tons of options for shotgun mics. This one's sort of in the mid-range for price. I think this is like 250 bucks. This is also a condenser mic, like the desktop mic, but it's an even more sensitive condenser mic, and it's got what's called a supercardioid pickup pattern, which means it's designed to only pick up sounds directly in front of the microphone. Therefore, you can put it further away from where you're sitting, point it at your face, and it'll get a pretty clean recording of mostly just you and mostly not the rest of the sound coming out of the rest of the room. That said, if you put headphones on, oh, I can hear my own voice, and you listen to the difference between me talking with a shotgun versus me talking with the dynamic mic right in front of my mouth, there's going to be a lot more humming. There's just going to be a lot more room sounds. You hear more echo in my voice because I'm actually in a concrete box. I'm in my garage. And with the boom mic, you can discern that my walls are made out of cinder block. There's an obvious difference, and noise is just bouncing all over the place. But the reason I like this microphone better is I do a lot of demonstration on this channel and my other channel. I'll be holding stuff up a lot, or over at the Space Warehouse, I'll be taking things apart and my whole desk is just covered in stuff. Plus, I'm sure there's some psychology to just seeing someone talking versus seeing someone with a big microphone in their face talking. Although I'm not sure which direction that psychology takes you. Maybe you would trust me more if I look like a news reporter. A very interesting thing I noticed in the Diary of a CEO podcast, in every one of their thumbnail pictures, you see the guest speaking into a microphone. But in the actual episodes, they use boom mics and there are no microphones on screen at all. That's a huge podcast with over 9 million subscribers. So I assume someone did the research on their thumbnails to discover that if there's a microphone in the picture, you want to watch it more for whatever reason. Anyway, a boom mic allows for more movement and still makes pretty good audio. This particular one, this same one here, can connect straight to your computer through USB-C, and it can connect straight to your camera through a TRS 3.5mm jack. And it can even go into an XLR interface with one of these little XLR to TRS converter things, adapter things. So you can use it with one of these for the post-processing if you want, or as part of a larger array of microphones if you have a podcast and you don't want to see the microphones. On to the last category you should consider for YouTubing are these little clip-on wireless battery powered lavalier things. I have a bunch of these, and to me they all sound pretty close to pretty equally good. With the Rode ones, the very popular Rode Wireless Go ones, there's a jack on the actual microphone itself, so you can pretty much just use this as a transceiver and then have a smaller lav mic either under your shirt or on your shirt. So if you want to hide it, this makes it easier to do that. Or these little Godox Magic XT ones have this little like magnetic button, I guess you would call it. That's gone. So you can put that like under your shirt and it will just attach right to your clothes. It's really, really light. Like it doesn't even pull down on your shirt at all. And then this goes on your camera to hear the signal. Or this other set from Godox, the receiver works with Sony cameras to where it actually passes the data straight into the, what do they call that thing? The multi-interface shoe. So the hot shoe does data and power, so you don't have to have any cords on it. That's very handy. But the mics themselves are a little bigger and they're just a clip-on. And they do have a little bit of weight to them. They can be annoying, but so much easier to use, especially if you're moving around a lot. They've all got their own pros and cons, and that's probably a video in itself I should be making after this one. So these types of microphones will get, compared to all of these other choices, the lowest quality of recording. But that's not to say that it's low quality. It can still sound great. It sounds just fine. And really, pretty much half of all people who watch whatever you make are gonna be watching it on a phone anyway, where they'll lose most of the audio quality on their end, having a tiny little speaker. But this type of microphone has the obvious perks of you being able to move around a whole lot more. With all these other types of microphones, you're parked in one position to get the best audio. And for a lot of channels, for most of YouTube, that's true of the camera anyway. So no big deal. But some of you will be, I don't know, in a DIY building stuff situation. Some of you will be talking to your viewers while you're working out. You'll be out in the world somewhere telling your story, and a lot of times you might not be very close to your camera itself. A lot of you will have no other choice than to use a mic like this, and that's pretty obvious. But there are still some benefits to using one of these while just doing a talking head shot at your desk. And that's mostly down to convenience. When you're using a wireless lapel mic, you are in most cases sending that audio straight to the camera. So there's no extra step of combining the audio after you shoot. And if you do happen to stop and start your camera a bunch of times when you're making a video, man, does that save a lot of time and a lot of organization that frankly I do not have when it comes to file management. If you end up with 10 video clips that need to be combined with 10 audio clips, and maybe you didn't set the camera clock in a long time so the dates and times don't match up on the files, these things can get so confusing. So when I'm making a video like this portion of the video, when all of a sudden I'm in the woods, which means I packed up and I went somewhere and I'm gonna end up with a bunch of different files, sometimes I'll just shoot with this Godox lapel mic. So in my opinion, in order of best sound to worst sound, we've got the XLR dynamic mics, followed pretty closely by the condenser mics, but I like a boom mic more than a desktop mic. But again, any dedicated mic is going to be better than no dedicated mic. Even on these vlogger style cameras like the ZV-E10 and the ZV-E10 II, where they have this much bigger dedicated mic that they love to talk about, get a mic. Use a mic. I hope this was helpful in some way. Goodbye.